Howdy everyone. My name is Sarah and today I'll be discussing yoga for migraine. So migraine is a neurological disease. It is the #1 most common neurological disease. And it's also the 3rd most common disease worldwide in general, which is staggering. So it's also the one of the most debilitating, disabling of conditions. 90% approximately of people during a migraine attack are unable to work and function normally. So we can see why it's so disabling. More women are affected by migraine than men. About 2 to 3 times more women will have migraine. And about 85% of people with chronic migraine are women. So chronic migraine is characterized by 15 or more migraine episodes a month, and episodic migraine is less than 15 a month. We don't know the root cause of migraine, even though it's so prevalent. We do know that there are hereditary factors. If one parent has migraine, their child has a likelihood of 50% of developing it. And if both parents have it, their child has a 75% chance. So that's a strong correlation. And we also know that there are many triggers that can lead to a migraine. So stress is the #1 migraine trigger, which is not very surprising given that it involves the nervous system and this is a neurological disease, as well as stress is linked to basically most diseases or all. Other triggers like hormonal fluctuations around the menstrual cycle, changes in the barometric pressure, or skipping meals, not getting enough sleep or too much sleep. Different foods can be very triggering for migraine. Having a brain or nervous system trauma, dehydration, so lack of exercise or too much exercise, because of the heating nature, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But these triggers most of them are a big part of why yoga can be very beneficial, or areas where migraine or yoga can be very beneficial for migraine. So there are comorbidities that are very common. Anxiety and depression are very common. So about 50% of people with migraine will either develop or already have anxiety, an anxiety disorder, and about 25% will have depression. So those numbers are much higher than people without migraine. As well as obesity increases the likelihood of developing migraine. And other comorbidities that are very common are epilepsy, insomnia, GI bleeding, gastric ulcers, and angina. Recent research has shown that medication overuse is linked to development of more comorbidities. So there are phases of migraine, which is interesting because mostly we think of the headache phase, but there are 3 other phases in conjunction to the headache phase. So there's 4 total. The first one is prodrome. It takes place before the migraine, and most people will experience this phase, but not every migraine episode will have it. So it can be days to hours before the headache. itself, and it can be characterized by increased yawning, fatigue, insomnia, GI complications like constipation or diarrhea, sensitivity to light, difficulty concentrating, and many other things like fluctuations in mood, anxiety, depressed mood. So things like this, within the prodrome, this is a wonderful time to practice relaxation techniques, pranayama, meditation, but it's important to develop the awareness first so that one knows when the prodrome is happening, because a lot of the symptoms can appear as just regular things one might experience. Then there's aura. Aura is less common. About 35% of people with migraine will have it. And it won't happen with every migraine episode, but it can be flashing lights, blurred vision, loss of vision. It can also be tingling or numbness that is in the face or radiates down to the hands or extremities. And very less common is auditory hallucinations, which is another kind of symptom. And those auditory hallucinations can be like footsteps or shouting and things, which is specific to the migraine, and it's not a psychological diagnosis. Then there's the headache phase, which can have vomiting, nausea. The headache itself can start on one side and move or spread to both sides, or it can just be on both sides. It can be a pounding or a sharp pain. It can also be in conjunction with insomnia, and sensitivity to light, smells, sounds, and other things like neck stiffness, body stiffness. And it's also interesting to note that not everyone will experience the headache itself with migraine. So that can lead to misdiagnosis. And then there's the postdrome, which is kind of like the migraine hangover, some people call it. And that can be dizziness, difficulty concentrating, sensitivity to light, fatigue, and body aches. And this is another time when it's good to practice meditation, pranayama, relaxation techniques to help with recovery. So now we can talk about yoga for migraine specifically. The yoga perspective is that there's excess heat causing, triggering migraine. So this means that with asanas and pranayamas and cleansing techniques, we're reducing that heat. And we also want to avoid those practices that are increasing the heat, because that can be very contraindicated and trigger migraine. As far as asanas go, we also want to focus on strengthening the nervous system and increasing the mobility of the spine, and specifically the cervical spine and upper body. With pranayamas, we want to focus on cooling pranayamas, and we can focus on Nadi Shodhana, Brahmari, Ujjayi. Nadi Shodhana will help balance the nadis, which is important. Cleansing techniques like Jal Neti and Vaman Dauti will help remove excess heat. Meditation practices like chakra meditation, focusing on the Ajna chakra, will be helpful in helping the nervous system. Yoga Nidra for stress relief and changing the belief that a person can get better. That is really important. And Omkar chanting as well will help stimulate the sympathetic nervous system and bring healing to the nervous system. and lifestyle modifications with yoga, like modifying the diet to reduce triggers, introducing positive, non-strenuous exercise, and helping with hormone balance, as well as just stress relief in general. So the benefits of yoga there are very many, some of which I've already discussed, but the vagal tone is the strength of the vagus nerve is increased with the practice of yoga, which is really important for migraine. We already talked about stress relief, as well as confidence in and positive self-worth. Those can be very affected by not being able to function during a migraine and having that be very recurring. So yoga can be very helpful for that, as well as increasing awareness of things that are helpful or not helpful for our well-being. Yoga can be very beneficial for that. So I hope that this was insightful, and if you or a loved one is suffering or experiencing migraine, I really hope that you're able to find relief through yoga and that this brings you some insight. Namaste and Hari Om.